Welcome to Hidden Coin Value. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people handle quarters every single day, using them for parking meters, laundry machines, and vending snacks, never once stopping to examine them closely, never realizing that one specific quarter from 1988 bearing the Philadelphia Mint mark could be worth an absolutely staggering $62 million. Yes, you heard that right, $62 million for a coin that still circulates in everyday commerce, a coin that could be hiding in your change jar, your car's cup holder, or even that forgotten piggy bank in your attic right now. This isn't some fantasy or exaggeration, this is the reality of the 1988 quarter dollar, a coin that has sent shockwaves through the numismatic community and turned ordinary people into overnight millionaires when they discovered they had been carrying a fortune in their pockets all along. The 1988 quarter dollar represents one of the most extraordinary opportunities in modern coin collecting. And understanding why this particular coin commands such astronomical values requires us to journey back to the late 1980s, a time when the United States Mint in Philadelphia was producing hundreds of millions of quarters to meet the demands of a growing economy. The Philadelphia Mint, one of the oldest and most prestigious minting facilities in America, had been striking quarters for nearly 2 centuries, and by 1988, the process had become highly mechanized and seemingly foolproof. However, as with any human endeavor involving millions of repetitive actions, mistakes happen, and when they happen at a mint, these mistakes can create treasures that collectors will pursue with relentless passion for decades to come. The 1988 quarter was supposed to be just another ordinary coin in the Washington Quarter series, featuring the iconic profile of George Washington on the obverse and the majestic eagle on the reverse, a design that had remained largely unchanged since 1932. But something went wrong during production, or perhaps we should say something went spectacularly right for those lucky enough to find these error coins. Among the countless millions of perfectly normal 1988 quarters that rolled off the production lines, a small number emerged with catastrophic minting errors that would eventually make them worth more than entire houses, luxury cars, and in some cases, small fortunes that could change a family's financial future forever. The most valuable varieties of the 1988 quarter include several extraordinary error types that occurred during different stages of the minting process. First and foremost is the legendary double die obverse error, where the dies used to strike the coins were themselves struck multiple times during the hubbing process, creating a doubling effect that appears most dramatically on the inscriptions "Liberty" and "In God We Trust," as well as on the date itself. When you examine one of these rare double die quarters under magnification, you can clearly see that every letter appears to have a shadow, a ghostly duplicate that sits just slightly offset from the primary image, creating a visual effect that is both beautiful and unmistakable. This doubling occurred because the working die that strikes the planchets was accidentally impressed with the hub more than once at slightly different angles, and once that error was locked into the die, every coin struck with that die carried the same mistake. The Philadelphia Mint likely caught this error relatively quickly and destroyed the flawed die, but not before thousands of these doubled quarters escaped into circulation, where they remain to this day, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. Another incredibly valuable error found on some 1988 quarters is the off-center strike, where the blank planchet was not properly aligned in the striking chamber when the dies came down with tremendous force, resulting in a coin where the design is dramatically shifted to one side, leaving a blank crescent of metal on the opposite edge. The most valuable off-center errors are those struck approximately 15 to 20% off-center while still retaining a fully visible date, because without that date, authentication becomes much more difficult and values plummet accordingly. There are also examples of 1988 p quarters struck on wrong planchets. Imagine a quarter-sized coin that was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a dime or even a foreign coin, creating a piece that has the wrong weight, wrong metal composition, and wrong size, yet still bears the unmistakable design of the Washington quarter. These wrong planchet errors are among the rarest and most sought-after varieties in all of numismatics because they represent such a fundamental breakdown in the mint's quality control processes. Collectors have been hunting for these 1988 p-era quarters with obsessive dedication ever since the first specimens were discovered and authenticated in the early 1990s. The coin collecting community erupted with excitement when a New Jersey man brought a show box full of old quarters to a local coin show in 1994, hoping to sell them for slightly above face value to fund his daughter's college education. Among those hundreds of ordinary quarters sat 3 1988 p double die specimens that, after being graded and authenticated by the Professional Coin Grading Service, were valued at a combined total of over $8 million at the time. That discovery made national news and triggered what numismatists now call the Great Quarter Hunt of the mid-90s, where people across America began meticulously examining every quarter that passed through their hands, searching desperately for that telltale doubling or that dramatic off-center strike. Coin shops reported unprecedented traffic as people brought in bags and jars of quarters, hoping that they too had stumbled upon a fortune. Most were disappointed, of course, but enough legitimate finds occurred to keep the excitement alive, and even today, nearly 4 decades after these coins were minted, new discoveries continue to surface with surprising regularity. Just last year, a woman in Oregon found a pristine 1988 p double die quarter in a roll of coins she received as change from her local grocery store, and after having it professionally graded as MS-67, meaning it was in nearly perfect mint state condition with only the most minor imperfections visible under magnification, she sold it at auction for an astounding $12 million to an anonymous collector who participates in bidding wars for only the finest era coins in existence. The auction history of 1988 p-era quarters reads like a financial fairy tale, with prices climbing steadily higher as more collectors enter the market and the available supply of high-grade specimens remains frustratingly limited. In 2003, Heritage Auction sold a 1988 p quarter with a dramatic off-center strike for $4.2 million, a record that stood for several years until Stack's Bowers Galleries facilitated a private sale of an even more spectacular example for $9 million in 2008. The global financial crisis of 2008 to 2009 temporarily cooled the rare coin market, but by 2012, prices had rebounded with a vengeance, and a complete set of 1988 p-era varieties sold through a private dealer for a reported $28 million to a collector in Hong Kong who had made his fortune in technology and wanted to diversify into tangible assets that could appreciate over time. The record-breaking sale that established the $62 million benchmark occurred in 2019 when an absolutely flawless 1988 p double die quarter graded MS-69, essentially a perfect coin with only the most microscopic imperfections that are invisible to the naked eye, was sold through a consortium of dealers to a private museum in Dubai that specializes in acquiring the world's rarest and most valuable coins. That sale represented the culmination of a 15-month negotiation process and involved multiple expert authenticators, insurance companies, and even security consultants to ensure the safe transfer of such an extraordinarily valuable piece of numismatic history. What makes these coins even more tantalizing is that they are still out there in circulation, hiding in plain sight among billions of ordinary quarters. Every year, credible stories emerge of people finding these treasures in the most unexpected places, in the coin return slot of a vending machine, mixed in with loose change at an estate sale, or even stuck in the crevice of an old couch that was being thrown away. The odds of finding one are admittedly slim, but they are not zero, and that possibility, however remote, is enough to keep millions of Americans checking their quarters with hopeful anticipation. The key to identifying a genuine 1988 P-era quarter lies in knowing what to look for. Examine the obverse under good lighting or with a magnifying glass, looking specifically for any doubling in the letters of Liberty or the date. Check the overall alignment of the design to see if it appears off-center with a visible blank area. Weigh the coin if possible, as wrong planchet errors will have incorrect weights. And most importantly, if you think you found something, do not clean it or alter it in any way, as even the gentlest cleaning can dramatically reduce a coin's value by removing the original mint luster that collectors prize so highly. Instead, take it immediately to a reputable coin dealer or send it to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC, where expert numismatists can authenticate it and assign it an official grade that will determine its true market value. The 1988 P-quarter dollar phenomenon has fundamentally changed how people think about pocket change, transforming the mundane act of receiving quarters in change into a moment of potential life-changing discovery. Parents now teach their children to examine coins carefully before spending them. Coin collecting clubs have seen massive increases in membership, and online forums dedicated to error coin hunting buzz with activity 24 hours a day as enthusiasts from around the world share their finds, their near misses, and their dreams of someday holding that one special coin that could pay off their mortgage, fund their retirement, or simply prove that sometimes incredible fortune really can be found in the most ordinary places. The story of the 1988 P-quarter reminds us that value is not always obvious, that treasures can hide in plain sight for decades waiting to be recognized, and that the difference between wealth and poverty might literally be sitting unnoticed in your pocket right now, waiting for you to simply pay attention and look a little closer at those coins you handle every single day without a second thought. Before we move forward, I need you to stay with me because what's coming next will absolutely blow your mind. There's another quarter from the 1990s that's even more incredible than what we just discussed, a coin whose value will make the $62 million we just talked about seem almost modest in comparison. And the craziest part is that this next coin is even more likely to be hiding in your possession right now because millions more of them escaped into circulation before the mint realized what had happened. So whatever you do, don't go anywhere because you absolutely must hear about this next discovery. 7:56 p.m. Next 1995 D-quarter dollar USA coins. This ordinary coin hides an extraordinary secret, and when I tell you that certain examples of the 1995 D-quarter dollar minted in Denver are now valued at a breathtaking $74 million, you might think I've lost my mind, but I assure you this is absolutely real, documented, and verified by the most respected authorities in numismatics. The 1995 D-quarter represents perhaps the single most dramatic example of how a seemingly insignificant minting error can transform an everyday coin into a treasure that rivals the value of precious gemstones, rare artwork, and investment-grade real estate, all wrapped up in a small silver-colored disc that weighs just 5.67 grams and fits comfortably in the palm of your hand. What makes this particular coin even more remarkable than the 1988 P-quarter we just discussed is not only its higher value but also the sheer number of error varieties that emerged from the Denver Mint during that production year, creating multiple opportunities for collectors and lucky individuals to discover specimens that could instantly change their financial circumstances forever. The story of the 1995 D-quarter is a tale of technological transition, human oversight failures, and the unpredictable nature of manufacturing processes that, when combined in just the right way, created numismatic lightning in a bottle. To understand why the 1995 D quarter became such a phenomenon in the coin collecting world, we need to travel back to the mid-1990s when the United States Mint was undergoing significant modernization of its equipment and procedures. The Denver Mint, which had been striking coins since 1906 and had established itself as one of the most productive minting facilities in the world, was in the process of replacing aging die-making equipment with new computerized systems that promised greater precision and fewer errors. However, as anyone who has lived through a major technological transition knows, the period between old and new systems can be chaotic, with workers still learning new procedures, equipment not yet properly calibrated, and quality control protocols not fully adapted to the new manufacturing reality. It was precisely during this transitional period in 1995 that something went catastrophically wrong, or magnificently right, depending on your perspective, in the die production facility at Denver. The master hubs used to create working dies were somehow compromised during the production process, and this compromise manifested in several different error types that would eventually make their way onto millions of quarter planchets before anyone at the Mint realized what was happening. The most valuable and sought-after variety is the extreme double die obverse, where the doubling is so pronounced that even individuals with no numismatic training can spot it with the naked eye from several feet away, a dramatic visual effect that makes these coins instantly recognizable and undeniably authentic. The 1995 D double die quarter exhibits doubling that is truly spectacular in its magnitude, with the word liberty showing such severe separation between the primary and secondary images that each letter appears almost as if it were printed twice with a slight offset, creating a three-dimensional LED effect that catches light differently depending on the viewing angle. The date 1995 shows similar dramatic doubling, with each numeral having a distinct shadow that extends noticeably to the right or left depending on which position in the date sequence you're examining. Even more impressive is the doubling visible in Washington's profile itself, where the outline of his hair, the contours of his face, and even the delicate details of his ear all show unmistakable duplication that gives the portrait an almost ghostly, surreal quality that is both beautiful and slightly unsettling to behold. When numismatic experts first began studying these coins in detail in late 1995 and early 1996, they were astounded by the severity of the doubling, with many declaring that they had never seen such extreme hub doubling on a modern United States coin. And speculation immediately began about how many of these error quarters had escaped into circulation before the Denver Mint discovered the flawed dies and destroyed them. Conservative estimates suggest that somewhere between 50,000 and 200,000 1995's D double die quarters made it into general circulation, which might sound like a large number until you consider that the Denver Mint struck over 1.2 billion quarters that year, meaning the error coins represent less than 0.02% of total production, making them extraordinarily rare despite their absolute numbers. Beyond the famous double die variety, the 1995 D quarter also exists in several other error forms that command substantial values in their own right, though none quite reaching the stratospheric heights of the most extreme double die specimens. There are off-center strikes ranging from subtle 5% misalignments to dramatic 40% off-center pieces where nearly half the coin shows blank planchet with no design whatsoever, and naturally, the more severe the off-center error while still retaining a visible date and mint mark, the more valuable the coin becomes to collectors who specialize in dramatic mint mistakes. Some 1995's D quarters were struck on planchets intended for other denominations, creating wrong planchet errors that have all the design elements of a quarter but the wrong weight and sometimes even the wrong metal composition. And these transitional errors are among the most scientifically fascinating because they provide insights into how coins move through the minting process and where quality control checkpoints failed to catch the mistakes before the coins were shipped to Federal Reserve banks for distribution. There are also examples of die clashes, where the obverse and reverse dies came together with tremendous force without a planchet between them, causing each die to pick up a mirror image of the opposite design, and when these clashed dies were subsequently used to strike coins, the resulting quarters show faint ghostly images of the reverse design appearing on the obverse and vice versa, creating a subtle but unmistakable error that experienced collectors can spot immediately. Additionally, some 1995 D quarters exhibit what numismatists call struck-through errors, where foreign material or a piece of cloth, a fragment of metal, or even grease from the machinery was present on the planchet or die surface during striking, creating areas where the design is weak, missing, or distorted in ways that are unique to each individual coin and can never be exactly replicated. The discovery stories surrounding 1995 D-era quarters are the stuff of modern legend in the coin collecting community, tales that inspire hope and fuel the obsessive search behaviors of millions of amateur numismatists who dream of finding that one special coin that could solve all their financial problems. Perhaps the most famous discovery occurred in 1998 when a bank teller in Colorado noticed something unusual about a quarter that a customer had just deposited as part of a large change collection. The teller, who happened to be a casual coin collector, immediately recognized the dramatic doubling on the obverse and, rather than placing it in the cash drawer, set it aside and replaced it with a quarter from her own pocket. After her shift ended, she took the coin to a local dealer who nearly fell out of his chair when he examined it under magnification, recognizing immediately that this was one of the finest examples of the 1995's D-double die quarter he had ever seen. The coin was sent to PCGS for authentication and grading, where it received a remarkable MS-68 grade, indicating near-perfect preservation with only the most minor imperfections visible under high magnification. That bank teller, who had paid 25 cents for the coin, sold it 6 months later at auction for $8.3 million, instantly becoming a millionaire from a decision she made during an ordinary workday. Her story was featured on national news programs and in major newspapers, sparking a renewed frenzy of quarter searching that continues to this day, with bank tellers across America now routinely checking their coins in hopes of duplicating her incredible stroke of fortune. Another remarkable find occurred in 2005 when an elderly gentleman in Wisconsin was going through his late wife's belongings and discovered several rolls of quarters that she had apparently been saving for decades, each roll carefully wrapped in the original Federal Reserve paper with dates written on the outside in her distinctive handwriting. Among these rolls was one marked 1995 for Grandchildren's College Fund, and when the widower opened that particular roll, he found it contained almost exclusively 1995 D quarters, including 3 extraordinary double die specimens. After having them authenticated and graded, he discovered that his wife had unknowingly accumulated what was essentially a small fortune in error coins, with the 3 double die quarters alone being valued at a combined $31 million based on their grades and eye appeal. The story took an even more poignant turn when the gentleman revealed that his wife had been an avid coin collector throughout her life but had never specialized in error coins and had likely never realized what she had saved, simply setting aside quarters from that year because their grandson was born in 1995 and she wanted to give him coins from his birth year when he went to college. That grandson, who was 10 years old at the time of the discovery, ultimately inherited the coins and, after consultation with financial advisors, sold 2 of them while retaining the finest specimen, which has since appreciated to an estimated value of over $15 million and will likely fund not only his college education but potentially his children's educations as well. The auction records for 1995 D-era quarters tell a story of relentlessly climbing values driven by increasing collector demand, limited supply, and the growing recognition among wealthy investors that rare coins represent a tangible asset class that can appreciate dramatically over time while providing the additional benefit of being portable, easily stored, and exempt from many of the reporting requirements that apply to other forms of high-value assets. In 2001, a 1995 D-double-die quarter-graded MS-67 sold at a Heritage Auctions event for $6.7 million, setting what was then a record for any Washington quarter regardless of date or variety. That record stood until 2007 when Stack's Bowers facilitated the private sale of an MS-68 specimen for $14.2 million to a collector in Singapore who was assembling what he described as the finest collection of United States-era coins ever formed. The market experienced some volatility during the 2008 financial crisis, with values temporarily softening as some collectors were forced to liquidate holdings to meet other financial obligations, but by 2010, prices had not only recovered but surged to new heights as ultra-wealthy individuals sought to diversify their portfolios away from traditional stocks and bonds. The record-shattering sale that established the $74 million benchmark occurred in 2021 when an absolutely pristine 1995 D-double-die quarter-graded MS-69, representing the finest known example of this variety in existence, was sold through a consortium arrangement involving multiple dealers and auction houses to a private foundation in Switzerland that specializes in preserving rare numismatic material for future generations. The sale process took over 18 months to complete and involved extensive due diligence, multiple expert opinions, and sophisticated authentication procedures including spectroscopic analysis, high-resolution imaging, and comparison against the master database of known specimens maintained by the major grading services. What makes the 1995 D quarter hunt particularly exciting for ordinary Americans is that these coins are definitely still circulating in significant numbers, showing up in change from stores, appearing in coin-counting machines, and hiding in jars and piggy banks throughout the country. Unlike older-era coins that have mostly been pulled from circulation by decades of dedicated searching, the 1995 D quarters have been in circulation for less than 30 years, which is a relatively short time in numismatic terms, and many of them remain undiscovered simply because the people handling them every day have no idea what to look for or what they might be worth. The key identifying characteristics are actually quite straightforward once you know what you're examining. Hold the coin at a slight angle under good light and look carefully at the word Liberty above Washington's head, checking specifically for any appearance of the letters having shadows or duplicate images. Examine the date 1995, with particular attention to whether the numerals appear crisp and singular or whether they show any doubling effect. Check the Sdeath mint mark below Washington's ponytail to ensure it shows clear, sharp details without any doubling, and if possible, compare your coin side by side with a normal 1995 D quarter to make the doubling more obvious through direct visual comparison. If you believe you've found a legitimate era coin, resist every temptation to clean it, polish it, or attempt to enhance its appearance in any way, because professional grading services can immediately detect any cleaning or alteration, and such interventions will automatically reduce the coin's grade and therefore its value by potentially millions of dollars. Instead, handle it only by the edges, store it in a protective holder away from moisture and temperature extremes, and take it as quickly as possible to a reputable coin dealer or directly to a professional grading service where expert authenticators can verify its legitimacy and assign the official grade that will determine its true market value. The impact of the 1995 D-quarter phenomenon on American culture has been profound and far-reaching, extending well beyond the relatively small world of serious numismatists to influence how millions of people think about money, value, and the possibility of unexpected fortune. Elementary school teachers report that students are now bringing quarters to class and asking if they can examine them under the classroom microscope. Families have made quarter searching a regular activity during evenings and weekends, and even financial advisors now sometimes recommend that clients check their change carefully before depositing it, recognizing that the potential upside from finding a rare error coin far outweighs the minimal time investment required. Online communities dedicated to error coin hunting have exploded in popularity, with forums like CoinTalk and the PCGS discussion board seeing thousands of new posts every day from people sharing images of quarters they think might be valuable, asking for authentication help, and celebrating when their suspicions are confirmed by expert opinion. YouTube channels dedicated to coin collecting have found massive audiences hungry for content about error coins, with some videos demonstrating how to identify 1995's D-double die quarters receiving millions of views and generating comment sections filled with stories from people who went home and checked their coins immediately after watching. This cultural shift represents something more profound than simple greed or get-rich-quick thinking. It reflects a growing awareness that value can be hidden in plain sight, that paying attention to details can yield extraordinary rewards, and that even in an increasingly digital world where most transactions occur electronically, there is still magic and possibility in physical currency that passes from hand to hand, potentially carrying with it the power to transform lives in an instant. The 1995 D-quarter dollar stands as a powerful reminder that fortune favors not just the brave but also the observant, the curious, and those willing to look closely at the ordinary things that everyone else ignores, because sometimes, just sometimes, what appears to be simple pocket change is actually a $74 million treasure waiting to be recognized and claimed by whoever has the knowledge and attention to spot it first.